So we'll get started. My name is Stephanie DeJager. I am one of the Lyon County Master Gardeners. I have been a Master Gardener in Lyon County for 27 years. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been probably one of the best volunteer opportunities that I've had, and I do all sorts of different kinds of volunteer work. So I'm going to start off with giving a plug to the Master Gardener program. Right now we are in the process of taking in new interns for the Master Gardener program. And I like to challenge people because they hear the word master and they think that I know everything about gardening. I really just know how to find the answers. I'm a master at finding answers. So it can be kind of tough sometimes. We get questions sometimes. We don't know. We know a lot of it. But we have many different resources to help us answer questions. So if you are interested in that, I'm a Master Gardener. We have one here too that Sue, who's also a Master Gardener with me here in Lyon County. And so sometime in September maybe, something like that, we'll be gathering people together and talking about those opportunities with the Master Gardener program.
Yeah, we've actually got a meeting on Friday, September 6th at 1 o'clock at Memorial Park. Weather's bad, it'll be at the Lyon. If you're interested, we'll be talking about becoming a Master Gardener at that meeting.
Okay, so we do have a few people in town that are already signed up. So we're really looking forward to that, to become a Master Gardener. It used to be you had to travel somewhere and take classes for a couple weeks. They don't do that anymore. You actually do it online. And it's kind of a self-paced thing, and if you have problems or questions, you have lots of Master Gardeners here who can help you through the process.
Well, the other thing too is that you can do it through the UNAM, and also you can do it through Brookings.
Through Brookings?
But if it's Brookings, it won't be a University of Minnesota.
No, it won't be University of Minnesota, but it'd be South Dakota. And the thing is, you're really close to Brookings, but I want
It's true.
Brookings. So.
Yep.
Then to become a Master Gardener in Minnesota, you have to take an additional class. If you become one in another state.
Okay.
You still have to do a transitional class into the University of Minnesota, into the Minnesota.
Okay, is it the same class basically, or what is it?
I don't know because I'm not familiar with,
Yep.
with the South Dakota.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Master Gardener program actually, and that's a good point, it's actually throughout the United States. Every state has Master Gardeners in it. Sometimes, many of you know I have a newspaper article, and when we put it in the newspaper, sometimes it goes out online, and so sometimes I get calls from people like in Alaska about their strawberries. Let me help you find somebody in Alaska who knows something about strawberries, because I don't have a clue, you know. So, you know, sometimes we get those kind of different questions. But it's kind of fun, because, you know, it's universal. Gardening's universal, right? So what's one thing that's really interesting about the Master Gardener program right now, Sue and I have been talking about this a little bit, is they're offering us opportunities that we didn't have before for training. Before it was just basically your garden setting. And now you're looking forward to training on naturalists. And I just took this one on home preservation.
I did one on healing in the garden.
Yeah.
That's the one that's coming up.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of interesting things that they have us doing. And what I find interesting about it is when I was a kid, I was in 4-H and all that stuff back then. Now I'm a 4-H mom. My mom was an extension person. Not that she was in extension, but anytime she had a question, she was asking the extension about it. Everything to do with homemaking or the farm or whatever. And it just, as I grew up, it kind of like faded out with the U of M. And I'm not sure what happened, but it's like they finally, so the light bulb turned back on, and they're figuring this out, and they're sending us volunteers out to help more and more with different things. And so the home preservation thing is one of them. I remember my mom talking a lot about home preservation. And
back in the 80s, Extension did what they called food preservationists.
yes.
And you got specialized training, because I did that.
Yep.
And then we gave classes and we tested pressure cookers and.
Yep, so
Did
that
that go by the wayside then?
that went by the wayside, but that's coming back. And that's what's happening here. And what's interesting to me is up until this point, they didn't let master gardeners do this because of liability reasons. And now apparently they've worked their way through it and decided it's okay with a lot of training. I spent probably 3 months training for this class. Mostly because I have a family and a job and everything else. It took me a little longer, and I admit there was probably a week or two I didn't do anything. So, a little bit of that's my fault. But getting through it, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this wrong. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm doing something wrong. And I kept saying that to myself. And I couldn't figure out why. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when they originally went through, the U of M went through and taught us about canning and preservation, that was back in, like you said, the 80s. And now we're finding out that all those old techniques are not so good anymore. There's some things we have to do. And the reason why is because things change, right? Who knew that the acidity level in tomatoes today is not as high as what it was back in the 80s? And they really are kind of pushing us towards not advocating for the boiling water bath canning method anymore.
Oh, absolutely not.
No, and the reason why is because we're not able to get those jars hot enough, and so there's some concern about that. I have always kind of went away from that, except for jams and jellies. And this has been my baby right here. Now I realize, how many of you are canners? Okay, do you use a pressure canner? Some yes, some no. What do you use for a canner?
Water bath.
Water bath? I'm going to help you change your mind on that tonight.
Water bath for fruits though is okay, right?
It's okay.
But like we started at the end of when I was in food preservation, the tomato one was 15 pounds, pressure, no time. Do they still do that?
No.
They've changed the book.
It's amazing how much it's changed. So, I'm going to show you something. She just walked in here, so I got to pick on my daughter a little bit. So this is her first year taking foods to 4-H. So we did green beans just because that's what we had, right, Jess? Okay, so she did a board. I'm going to open this up. These are the steps right here. If I can get it to stand, behave itself. These are the steps on this board of what it takes to can that 1 jar of green beans. When it's all written down on a piece of paper. And what I mean by steps is she started off with picking the green beans, bringing them in and washing them, getting the lids ready, putting the water in here, getting the book out. And now after taking this, I've had this canner for almost 20 years. My book is probably no good anymore. It probably is. Time to throw it away. And the bottom one is her putting them in the canner and so on. But a lot of people, when they talk about pressure canners, they're scared because of 2 reasons. First is the cost. If you've never canned with a pressure canner and you walk into a store, the base price for these things is about $65, $70, and you go, ooh.
Last mine is 65 years old.
So some people who maybe can't afford it, you're cringing. It's an investment. It's an investment. But you can see for one that's been around for all these years, it's in pretty good shape.
You've taken good care of it.
It's my baby. So looks pretty good. The one thing that I found out when I went through the training for canning, we looked up canning green beans and so on, is we canned it in here, and I thought, I wonder how many things I was doing wrong. Well, the first thing I found out is, so we got to pretend a minute, so you get your green beans in here, and you're getting ready to can. Here's my weight. You put the lid on, if I can do this without making a lot of noise. And one thing I did is I went like this. Lid's on, top went on. No, not anymore. That one mistake could cost me food poisoning in my house, in my household, especially with something like green beans. Who would have known one small thing like that would happen. So what they want you to do now, and we'll watch a couple of videos about some interesting, more scarier things that we used to do for canning, and then we'll talk about them, is that we want the steam to come out of here. You know, it'll spurt, and then pretty soon it's coming out, and you think, oh my goodness, it's going to dry up in the bottom, all the water is going to dry up, and then I'll have a fire, or it'll explode. There's a lot of people who think these will explode. No, we're not filling it full of things like that will explode. This will come off, and you have a valve on the bottom that it'll pop off. And then about that time, you're running to it to shut the heat off underneath. But as soon as this starts pouring the steam out in a long stream, you got to kind of sneak up on it, tip this up, and put it on. And then boom, it goes up. It's right up there to your 12, 15 pounds of pressure. So it goes right up. One thing that we're trying to find out, like you used to do, I'm so glad you're here. This makes us
My
eat.
pressure cooker is a little different than yours, Chloe. Mine's a Presto. And
Yep.
mine has the weighted part of
Yep.
yours. It's got a little thing and you have to keep it open.
Yep.
And let it steam out for a good 3 to 4 minutes full. And then you tighten that down.
Oh boy.
And then the pressure goes up.
And how do you do that without burning your fingers? Carefully?
Not hot.
Okay. So,
It's got a little, I don't know, it's some kind of a material that it isn't, it's not metal. It's some type of a wood.
a wood, okay. So what's interesting about a pressure canner is it has very few working parts. You have your weight, you have your dial, you have this nice seam on the inside. That's what helps keep it all sealed good. This is what pushes forward when you have your steam going. But the most important part of this is right here, the dial. And one thing I'm checking on, it's really hard to get a hold of anybody with the U of M right now because they're all at the state fair, that's what I've been told, is I believe, now that I have taken this, we can go back like you used to do, and we will be able to check the dials on these canners to make sure that when they say they're 15 pounds pressure, they really are at 15 pounds pressure.
There was a little apparatus that Shirley Anderson Forge was who I
Yep.
worked under. And she had a little apparatus, and we just needed the lid, and they hooked it up and
Yep, you basically, you'll do is you'll bring the lid in, just like this. We hook it up underneath, and we will run this little foot pedal. Doesn't even take electricity, just foot power. And it has another little dial that'll sit next to it, and you can see if your dial says 15 and the equipment says 15, then you're right on. But then let's say that it's supposed to be calibrated and now yours is saying 12. Well, now you know either you need a new dial or you need to make adjustments for that. So that's one of the biggest things that we are trying to do, and hopefully by next spring we can do that. And I work for a living with Lyon County, and I work a lot with Yellow Medicine County, and I did find that Yellow Medicine County has way in the back closet one of these gizmos that can check this. So the next time I get up to Yellow Medicine County, what we're going to do is maybe work with a few counties around in the area and offer next spring before vegetable season takes off again, and have people bring their canners in, and we'll double check. Otherwise, your other option is sending this or this into Presto or whoever, and there's some information here about that in order to get it checked. It's actually free, but you have to pay for shipping.
So what brand is yours?
I think this is a Presto, yeah. I know, I remember where I bought it and everything. It was at Hardware Hank here in town.
Stephanie,
So-
another thing that I noticed when I bought my new glass top stove,
Oh, yeah.
very thoroughly read all the instructions, is that it said not to use a pressure canner on the stove.
well, that's what I've got, and I've been doing it for 20 years.
And I've talked to people that have done that, and I've talked to people that haven't tried it. Because I bought a brand new pressure canner about the year before I bought.
Well, I did a new pressure canner that we got like 2 years ago, and we have a glass top. And fortunately, we also have our old, the regular stove top downstairs.
The rule of thumb, and they do talk about glass stovetops, we'll talk about this website here in a minute, is when you have, well, you can kind of see where mine has been sitting. Must have had it really going one day. You're supposed to have, your burner can be as bigger than your canner if you want, but no smaller than an inch. So that's a problem too, because like someone was talking to me about their canner in their apartment. They want to do canning, and apartments have very small stoves, and the canner they had was way too big. It would have not worked in that situation. Because why, so the question is, before we get on to this, is why do we, besides saving food, why is it so important to preserve our food correctly? Does anyone want to? I'm
Darn sick if you don't.
darn sick. Darn sick. So, on one of the videos I watched, this lady was talking about how she had, believe it or not, green beans. And what she always did is she had company coming, she would open it up, and she sniffed it, and then she thought it maybe seemed questionable, so she took her finger and just dipped it in there and tasted it. She was in the hospital for over a month, just from dipping her finger in there and tasting it, because the jar was spoiled. It had listeria in it. So it does not take much, was the good way of looking at it. What they suggest, and this is where I have a lot of long conversations with the nutritionist at the extension office, and she's in the 4-H building, is that when we go to cook anything we can, you're supposed to cook it on a rolling boil for 15 minutes before you eat it. So my question is how much vitamins and things, all the good things, how much of that is left? Well, they said if you're canning properly, pressure canning properly, and this is above all the other ways of preserving things, you are still maintaining your vitamins over fresh food even, because so many people nowadays, you go to the grocery store, maybe you plan your meal out for that week, and Friday you're finally eating those fresh green beans. Well, by the time last Friday to a week later, those vitamins in there have decreased so much that there's not a lot left. This, on the other hand, still, even with the 15 minutes of boiling, still has more vitamins left in it than something that sat in your fridge for a week. So kind of curious, right?
I would say that was one of the things that we heard a lot about. People would pick their beans or whatever, and they would can them when they got around to it. It don't work that way.
Yep, if you want to do the best thing for you is to pick your harvest and try to plan on preserving it as soon as you can. Every day that goes by, your nutrition goes down. It's just that simple. And that can be hard. I know we all work and we're busy, and suddenly you have 3 rows of green beans that are ready to go, and now you have to really hoof it, and next thing you know it's 11 o'clock at night and you're standing in the kitchen pressure canning something. So the nice thing about it is if you get your pressure canning done, it comes up, you wait for your 20-25 minutes or whatever it is that you're canning, and the timer is done, you've done all the things you need to do, you can shut the heat off and just leave it till the next morning, go to bed. You don't have to really do anything else. But on the flip side, if you're in a hurry and you have lots of things to do, you got to really make sure that you maintain things. We have a picture on here. What did I say, Jess? I think every load of green beans I've put in here this year, I must have a batch of bad jars broke. 1 jar every time, right on the bottom. Right on the bottom. And things happen. So what do? I pick the green beans out, pick the glass out, green beans get thrown away, put in the compost, the glass gets recycled. So it happens. It's part of life. If you want to choose what is better, freezing or canning, pressure canning. It'll give you more nutrition than even freezing. So the only kicker is you can spend 5, 10, 20 minutes doing a quart of corn versus an hour and a half in a pressure canner for corn. corn takes forever. Another thing that I learned before we kind of go over a few other things is that tomatoes, and I have a handout on here, we were talking about who knew about the acidity of tomatoes being a lot less. I have not found anybody who could tell me why that is. A lot of it is the different varieties from what we used to raise to what we raise now. Some varieties have been around forever. Some of it's our soil, sometimes it's our water, things like that. Now they are advocating that any tomatoes you can, whether it's salsa, whole tomatoes, it doesn't matter, you add a little bit of lemon juice just to bring down the acidity of those lemons. And you can do vinegar if you want, although you can taste that, so maybe that's not an option. So what they're saying is lemon juice. And it can be, you know, the bottles of lemon juice too. They don't have to have a real lemon. So that's something new. When you read through here, it's very interesting if you've been canning a while to see the things that have changed. We also have a couple of books that you can buy and one DVD. So the one book is So Easy to Preserve, and then there's the Ball book of canning, which I know you can get through the library because I checked that out and looked at it. And some things we're trying to get away from with our younger people or younger residents or younger gardeners is we have a lot of recipes that are handed down. We have grandma who says how to tweak this or that, and we're trying to get away from that because a lot of that is not scientifically based, and you are opening yourself up to possibly making you sick. Has anyone ever tried canning meat?
Yes, I don't have
Okay.
Back when I was in 4-H, back in the 40s, meat was one of the exhibits.
Yeah. And
Chicken and beef.
And we won't go through that a lot today, but that's one where my mother-in-law has done that for us. And I have to say, it looks terrible. When you look at it in a jar, you go, oh my gosh, how can I ever eat that? It looks terrible. But I tell you what, on a cold January day when we're lambing out on our farm, you can take a jar like that, cook it for 15 minutes, get some, as my family calls them, fake potatoes, make a little bunch of that, dump it on there, and you can eat like a king. So you can do the meat, but the meat, when you start talking about that, and we'll talk about the website here, is very important not to cut corners, because that's one that will cost you big time on being sick. So one thing I have up here, and I'm an advocate for the U of M because I think out here they have no voice. They don't use their voice out here, I guess, so I have to talk a little louder for them. On their website, you go to the U of M extension. It used to be you go to some office and they'd have all these books that you could get for free, you know, whether you're in 4-H or home arts or whatever, anything from needlecraft to crocheting to canning to gardening, they had it. You could just go get one. There's none of that anymore. It's all online. It's all online. So does everybody in here have access to getting online? Nowadays, most people do. So you can access this on your computer, your iPad, or whatever. You go to the U of M extension website to home preservation. And that's why I did not bring everything they have on there, because we would probably go around the room because there is so much. So I picked on tomatoes and corn because I think a lot of people right now are kind of focusing on that. But they have all of these videos on there. So if you don't want to spend the time reading, they call them a 5-minute video. And I'll show you. We're going to watch a couple of them and talk about them afterwards. So let me pull one up here so you can see what it looks like. So there's all sorts of information about boiling water canning method, canning equipment, pickling. I should have pulled that one out too. There's a lot of cucumbers coming out of the garden. Food preservation methods, all the way down, homemade jerky. And so we're going to pull up this one on Explore the Options. And it's called a 5-minute series.
Welcome to the Food Preservation Methods Explore the Options 5-minute module. I am Megan Baumler, recording for Suzanne Dreesen, University of Extension
Let's see.
Food Safety Educator. You have many options for preserving food for later use. For example, you can
Okay.
freeze, dry, can, or
Okay, I'll
pickle
hold on here a
things.
second.
Stephanie, I have a question about the tomatoes. Did they distinguish the acidity between an heirloom and the hybrids?
No.
It says in here something about heirloom tomatoes are treated.
Yeah, they don't go specifically by variety. Did everybody get one of these? So what they have, factors that affect the acidity level. So variety, stressful growing conditions, and Lord knows we've had that the last couple years. Over mature fruit, and by that they even mean if you bring it in and didn't have time to can it, now it's getting kind of soft sitting on the counter, that's overripe. And then when we add other things like your salsa and so on, that really affects it too. And let's see here. So they have tomatoes packed in water. They've got packed in juice, where you made juice. There's a difference there. And if you look at this, so let's just pick on tomatoes, no added liquid, the very first one. I know a lot of people, that's the one they do. You cut up your tomatoes after you have them peeled, and you go ahead and put them in the jar. Okay, so if you look at it right across there, boiling water bath, 90 minutes. It's a long time. How long were you doing your tomatoes?
Trying to remember, but it's less than that, but not by a whole lot.
I know I was a lot less than that.
It wasn't a lot, I'd say it was more closer to an hour.
Okay. Pressure canner would be 25 minutes.
See, I'm one who likes my tomatoes. I push them down in their own juice, make their own juice in the jar.
Yep.
But I like them really soupy and really mushy. And so I put mine in a pan, and then I put them in the jar.
Okay.
And I process them in the pressure.
So are they hot when you put them in the jar, right? Okay, so then there's a difference. So then that would be,
I still used to do them 20 minutes after I put them in.
and I have to say, most likely, if you do it over the time, there's nothing really that's going to hurt it unless you go like, way over abundance. Yeah, right. Did someone have a comment here?
Well, I was gonna say, on the timings, the water bath takes 90 minutes, but the pressure canner takes 25. But the pressure canner technically takes longer than that, because you have to wait for it to get to a boil, wait for the steam to push out, then you start your time. Then you have to wait for it to cool off and steam down before you open it starts to make that.
Exactly. So it just depends on how you look at it. That's a good point. So tomatoes and corn, definitely something on our minds. We're
Those
ready?
are two things that I always felt you really saved money with.
Yes,
Because tomatoes are very expensive for as easy it is, most years.
most years.
To grow a tomato plant.
Right. So we'll watch this here.
Unless food is preserved in some way, it will spoil. Spoilage begins soon after harvest. The high percentage of water in most foods make it very perishable. Food preservation is the method of preparing foods so that we can eat it later. Methods of preserving food include drying, refrigeration, freezing, canning, curing, pickling, smoking, and fermentation. The goal of food preservation is to ensure safety with the best quality possible. Let's look at the most common home food preservation methods. Canning is the process in which food is placed into a jar and heated to temperatures that destroy microorganisms and inactivate enzymes. The heating and later cooling forms a vacuum seal, making it shelf stable. There are only 2 approved canning methods, boiling water and pressure canning. Pickling is the skillful blending of spices, sugar, and vinegar with a fruit or vegetable. In pickling, we add acid like vinegar for safety and flavor. In jelly products, the high sugar content binds with the liquid, making it difficult for microorganisms to grow. To prevent spoilage from yeast and mold, can, freeze, or refrigerate jelly products. Microorganisms cannot grow at freezing temperatures. Freezing is the easiest and fastest food preservation method. Drying reduces the moisture so that microorganisms can't grow. Store in airtight containers so that moisture from the air doesn't rehydrate the product and allow any microbes to grow. Many vegetables begin to lose their vitamins after harvest. Nearly half of the vitamins may be lost within a few days unless the fresh produce is cooled or preserved. Under refrigeration, produce may lose half of its vitamins within 1 to 2 weeks. The heating process during canning destroys from 1/3 to 1/2 of vitamins A and C, thiamine, and riboflavin. Once they're canned, additional losses of these sensitive vitamins are from 5 to 20% each year, depending on storage conditions. The amounts of other vitamins, however, are only slightly lower canned compared with fresh food. Vegetables handled properly and canned promptly after harvest may actually be more nutritious than fresh produce that's held many days after harvest. Drying and freezing, like all methods of preservation, can result in loss of some nutrients, but less than canning or refrigeration. What's the shelf life of preserved foods? For best quality and taste, not for safety, canned food delivers its best quality if eaten within a year. Frozen vegetables and fruits taste best if consumed within 8 to 12 months of freezing. Dried vegetables last about 6 months. Jerky has a 2-week shelf life stored at room temperature. Refrigerator freeze and increase the shelf life of jerky to 6 months. Dried fruits and herbs last 1 year. No matter which food preservation method you choose, use a reliable, tested recipe. You might want to pause this video to jot down the suggested resources. Consider using the Complete Guide to Home Canning by the
Okay, does anyone want to write those down? So the one you already have a copy of it, how to order it. And the other one is the Ball Blue Book, which I know the library system also has if you want to check that out. It's a really good
It
resource.
says a 1994 edition, that's the newest one.
That's the newest one. You have anything that is less than that in years, it's time for it to be recycled because the recipes have changed. Yes, ma'am.
My husband and I use the website, the National Center for Home Food Preservation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a very good one. In fact, the U of M takes some of their information from there too. If you happen to get on here, you will hear them talking about it. I'm surprised that they don't have it listed on there, to be honest. So that's a very, very good one. So you must do a lot of home preserving then.
Not a lot. We do a lot of stewed tomatoes. We do a little bit of salsa. We've dabbled in meat because we do deer every
Okay.
season. Potatoes, green beans, carrots. But we want to get into it more. That site though doesn't seem to have. It's more so just the basic things. It's not. Doesn't really have good salsa recipes and stuff.
Right. And so, let me escape back out of here. So, going on to the next thing, we'll watch just a couple here.
Your book has a really good ketchup recipe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, really good ketchup recipe. It has some interesting things in it.
Okay, this one I found interesting. It's kind of a historical thing in a way, because I know a lot of people don't do this anymore, but a lot of people don't know where we've been to where we are now. We'll just watch this one, then I'll have one
Thanks
more.
for tuning in to the unsafe, outdated food preservation methods.
So this
module.
is some of the
I
old
am Megan
ways.
Baumler, recording for Suzanne Dreesen, University of Minnesota Extension food safety educator. Where do you get food preservation information? According to the National Center for Home Food Preservation, 51% of home food preservers rely on family and friends for recipes and information. Grandma may be sharing what she learned from her mother, which is now outdated. There are lots of scary and unsafe methods on the internet, too. Using credible and reliable food preservation resources is critical so that no one gets sick. A National Center for Home Food Preservation survey found that 55% of respondents used their canning instructions as is, while 31% adapted the instructions for their personal use. Adapting recipes is risky and can ultimately affect processing times and even the method of canning. For safety's sake, follow canning instructions and recipes exactly. Using recipes from canning publications or cookbooks dated before 1994 will be underprocessed. The National Center for Home Food Preservation survey found that over half of home canners are underprocessing food in canners. Underprocessing results in risk for botulism. Use current research-tested canning recipes and resources. Consider using the Complete Guide to Home Canning by the USDA or the So Easy to Preserve book from the University of Georgia. There are lots of other websites, blogs, and videos on the internet. Make sure they reference research-tested recipes, otherwise don't use them. Credible websites include the National Center for Home Food Preservation, baldfreshpreserving.com, or university websites. Canning recipes found in old cookbooks and canning books use open kettle canning. The open kettle method isn't really canning because you put hot food into jars and seal with a lid without additional heat processing in a canner. The National Center for Home Food Preservation study found that 44% of home canners open kettle fruit and tomatoes, 35% open kettle vegetables, and 20% open kettle meat or fish. Open kettle is very risky. Further processing in a canner is needed to destroy disease and spoilage microbes in the product. Reliable food preservation resources instruct you to heat process your food product in a boiling water bath canner or in a pressure canner. Botulism is a concern with low acid foods like vegetables, meat, and fish. These foods must be superheated in a pressure canner to destroy spores that cause botulism, a potentially deadly foodborne illness. The inversion method instructs you to put hot food, like jam or tomatoes, into a jar, cap it, and then turn the jar upside down for a length of time. This is risky because spoilage microorganisms are not destroyed by further heat processing in a canner. The product will likely spoil during storage. Lids may become unsealed due to low vacuum or gases produced by spoilage. Turning the jar upside down can actually break the seal. Heat processing freshly filled jars of fruit or preserves in a boiling water bath canner is needed to destroy heat-sensitive bacteria or spoilage organisms. Another unsafe and outdated method is to melt and pour paraffin wax on top of a product to seal. This is risky because the wax can shrink, crack, and allow airborne molds to grow on surface and throughout the product. Throw away jams and jellies with mold on them. The mold could produce mycotoxins, poisonous substances that can make you sick. USDA and microbiologists recommend against scooping out the mold and using the remaining jam or jelly. When in doubt, throw it out. Make sure the equipment that you are using is designed to safely preserve food. Appliances like ovens, microwaves, and dishwashers are not recommended because the heat transfer does not reduce the risk of disease or spoilage microbes. Also, be aware of new equipment options available on the market, like electric pressure canners, which have not been researched. The National Center for Home Food Preservation does not recommend them because they are a pressure cooker and not a pressure canner as advertised. Now you know what methods are unsafe and why. For safety's sake, use and share science-based and safe food preservation resources and methods. Thank you for watching.
So one thing to point out in this video is the new quick pots, right? You heard that? So I have not bought one. To me, they're like a fast crock pot. I don't know, what names do they come by? Instant pots. Don't do it. Yep, so if you think about it, and I've had some young people say, hey, I got this, I'm going to can something. Well, the problem with it is, sure, it gets hot, but it doesn't build up pressure. So between the heat and the pressure, that's what we want to kill all the bad things that can come at you in your food, right? So that's what we're really interested in. So these are a couple of examples. This website is amazing. So some of the things you've been looking for that you can't find on the other website, there's videos on here. They're 5 minutes long. Sometimes there's 2 or 3, so maybe you want another example. So for example, you're getting into making jams and jellies. And gosh darn it, you know, my jelly didn't come out the way it's supposed to. It was runny. Well, who do I call? What do I do about that? Well, you can do one of 2 things. I can talk to you about it. You can call the extension answer line and talk to them and just say, hey, I just tried making raspberry jelly and it's runny like water. What did I do wrong? Can I fix it? That's my first question is, can I fix it? So you can call them, you can talk to me, or you can go on this website because they talk about that quite a bit. They have a person on there who works through the extension, also in Georgia, and they talk a lot about the different ways of how things can go really bad with jams and jellies. And I think that's one thing people have a lot of questions about. Some people like their jam and jelly a little bit more firmer, some don't care, some like it runny. You know, it's up to you and your family what you want. So that's another one that you can check out. Has anybody tried fermentation? What have you tried? Cabbage?
Yeah, we've done sauerkraut. My husband has a recipe from his grandpa, fermented pickles.
Okay.
He's done fermented fresh salsa.
Okay. Okay. Fermentation, you don't hear a lot about that here where I grew up, which was closer to Glencoe and Hutchinson. We had a lot bigger German population. I grew up on sauerkraut like you wouldn't believe. It was a staple of our diet. And I think everybody did the crock method. So they have these big crocks. In fact, I've got a hibiscus tree planted in my mother-in-law's crock pot out on the farm. So that's what it's getting used for. Those old ways were good then, not so good now. But fermentation is very interesting because you can do a lot with that. We don't talk about that one very much because everybody thinks right away about sauerkraut. But like you were saying, you can do a lot of different things with it and make some good things. I tell people to be really careful. For example, I see a lot of canned goods for sale now on the garage sale markets. I saw one today and I just sat there looking at it going, I think what they did is they pickled some cucumbers, added some peppers, so now you have 2 different things in that jar, and they used an old glass jar that had pickles in it and probably just shut it. And I'm like, boy, what do I do? Do you say something to this person and say you are potentially opening yourself up to some problems by selling those? Because they're not going to stay good. Another one is there's recipes out there for making pickles out on your deck. They're called sun pickles. Another bad idea. So if you think about it, if you have your pickles here, they're on your deck, the sun hits here, no sun here, you know, you got 2 different temperature things going on. There's no way. If they sealed, I think I would be more afraid if they did seal, because then there's something really going on with those sun deck pickles. So that's another one that I've heard a lot about.
Refrigerator pickles.
Yeah,
They go from baking them to the.
yep, and I think the one thing about refrigerator pickles is we have to keep in mind if you make them, a lot of people will put them in this big container, they're only meant to be in there for so long, to be eaten immediately. And you could probably, you know, leave them in there a little longer than a typical food just because of all the vinegar and all the sugar you have in there, but it's not really considered a preserved food because of that, temporarily. They're really good though. I like them. They're amazing.
It's got a dill one that's just scrumptious.
Yes, yes.
The video that we watched, the unsafe or outdated methods, one thing that I see coming back, and some of my friends are doing is, I laugh at the name, oven canning.
Ah, yes.
and they oven can their pickles. I mean,
Yep, and again, it's the same thing. You have the heat, but you don't have the pressure.
yeah.
So they're opening themselves up to a lot of problems. If they make them, hopefully they take them out of the oven, put them in the fridge and eat them right away. But if they don't, and a year later, they can make themselves very sick. And
They're using it as a regular canning thing, and they, downstairs in the basement
Right.
and sell it on the shelf, and it might get leaking within a year.
They put a lid
Right.
on and seal them
Supposedly they seal, yeah.
in the oven?
Yeah.
and I think what happens is the ring.
I don't know
yeah.
what their, the exact process, but yeah.
I think the ring probably gets hot and it sticks onto the glass. But I bet if you went and tried to, tip it off, it would probably come off pretty easy. I'm not sure. I don't have that problem, obviously. So those are some ideas. The one thing that is really, really important, though, when it comes to canning, freezing, everything, that was really honed in on me is food safety. And like her picture had on that board, it begins in the garden. As master gardeners, have had training, believe it or not, about food safety, because we hear about food recalls all the time now. And I'm not sure if it's because we're having more, or is it because they're getting better at telling us what's happening. I don't know. But it can happen to us too. So, for example, let's go back to the green beans. You're out in the garden and you see that your dog left you a present, shall we say. Skip that area. Don't pick those green beans. And then come back later after you're done picking all the beans that you want. Remove that from the area. Get it out of there. You take it off to the side of the garden or whatever, because that's where the food safety problems start. They're even telling folks that you should have something out in the garden now to wash your hands before you pick anything. And then I used to do it all the time. I'd pick stuffed tomatoes and then go over there and pick some more, and what would I do with it? Set it on the ground. Don't do that. You can take it to the house and wash it, but now they found out, sometimes you wonder where you can put things because of all the studying and testing they've done. You bring contaminated produce to the house, where do you go with it? Right to the kitchen, and you set it where? On the counter or in the sink. So next thing you know, your little one comes along before you had a chance to wipe that off, and there's some kind of E. coli there or something, and they just sat their peanut butter sandwich there while they put their shoes on, take their sandwich back and go on their merry way. Guess what just happened? They could be sick. And they have found out this is the same thing as that they're telling people not to wash their chicken anymore. That was always saying you washed your chicken to wash stuff off. And the reason why they're saying no to that, because you know you're going to cook it, but they want you to take it out of the package and put it right into what you're cooking. Don't stop anywhere in between, because if you set it on the counter or even put it in the sink to wash it, and you just go back and kind of run some soap around, use your cleaner, kind of wipe it around, you are spreading E. coli everywhere in your kitchen. It just scares me to death to think about that now. And so it starts in the garden. You get in the house, you need to make sure your jars are clean, that your kitchen is clean, your hands are clean. If you're sick, don't can, don't freeze, because believe it or not, a lot of that stuff will stick with the food. So you have to kind of think things through. Make sure you have the equipment that you need. And when in doubt, like they said, throw it out. If there's anything you come up to that jar and it looks a little different, the color's off, you're just not 100% sure, it's much better just to throw it away and then take a chance than somebody in your house is going to get really, really sick. Does anybody have any questions?
What about the old thing about when you take your jars out and you let them sit, and if they don't pop, the lid doesn't click or pop when it cools off?
You have 12 to 24 hours to eat that product. So put it in the fridge once it's cooled off, and then you better eat it. If it's Monday and now it's Friday and you go, oh, I forgot about that jar of tomatoes, out it goes. 12 to 24 hours, no more. Any other questions?
Okay, my canner is like yours, except
Okay.
it's a tall one.
Yep,
So you can do 2 layers.
yep.
Now, I had somebody tell me I had to have a grate in between the jars.
Yep,
You do?
yep.
Okay, because I did that wrong.
Do you know where to get one?
No.
Okay,
I
so,
have enough canners, so
oh, it doesn't matter?
I can just take one out of another canner.
Okay,
But I didn't, it never said in the book to do that. I did not know that.
yeah, yep, and just like my book that came with this too, it's time to throw it away.
Dang it, he was right.
Was that your husband?
No.
Okay.
His friend.
His friend, okay.
That's worse. Okay, and then I have a gas stove.
Okay,
And when I bought my original ones,
mhm,
it said 15 pounds. And I like 15 pounds with gas because it's so much easier to control than trying to keep it at 10.
I understand, yep.
And now they don't put 15 pounds in the new books anymore.
If you look at it, if you can find one, I mean, maybe the
Well, I
library,
have old ones.
okay, if you have an old one, grab a new one, or the library still has old ones, grab a new one. It's much longer. It's much longer that we're canning in higher pressure.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder,
So that's
when-
obsolete now.
when my daughter is my age, how long is she going to be canning stuff? She's 11. She's going to be in there forever canning something because it's going to take forever. And a lot of it is just because of the bacteria that we're fighting is getting more resistant and getting sneaky about things. It's just making it a lot harder.
Okay, and then I really like my pressure canner, and I
Yep.
don't want to use the water bath anymore for anything.
Mhm.
Can I do everything in my pressure canner?
I would advise not doing jams and jellies in there because it's hardly worth your effort. Do you do a lot of jams or jellies? Okay.
Not under pressure, I would.
No.
You can do, well, because I do all of my jams and jellies, I make them and they go in the jar and then they go in the pressure cooker and then I do the hot water bath.
Yep. So the interesting thing about jams and jellies, you're working, no matter how you do it, you're working with something that's hot. It's always got to be heated because of the pectin that you're adding in. And so you buy your pectin in the store, whether you buy a powder or a liquid, really depends on what you want to do. Read the instructions, and it always says it's got to be hot. And it has a specific way that you add things to your raspberries or your strawberries. And it always says, make sure you either freeze or boil bath them.
But a lot of fruit, they say you could, I want to do my fruit in there, and,
You can do fruit.
but
Nope.
the ball book doesn't say that.
Yeah.
We did peaches.
You can do
in there,
fruit.
They were just fine. We did
Yep.
peaches.
So we do the
So
new
how did you
books.
know how long?
I looked it up on the National Preservation.
Yeah.
Do they say hot, because we used to have with fruits, you could either do a cold pack, so you would put the peaches in the jar cold.
Yep.
Or it would say hot pack.
Yep.
And you could heat them in the
Yep.
pan on the stove and then put them in.
Yep.
Do they still do that?
Yep. So if you look on the U of M Extension website, when it comes to fruit, it lays it all out on there for you. It'll tell you how to do fruit.
See, I wish they had a conversion chart, like, you know, to say, if it's so many minutes in the boiling water bath, what you could do in the pressure.
And I believe just like on the tomato one where it does tell you that, the fruit one on here does too.
Okay,
It'll tell you both.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is really crazy, but in Runnings, they got pickled eggs. Is that safe to do?
Well, I believe it's sold in a jar that's sold or sealed, I should
The thing
say.
is, I have eggs, I don't know what to do with, but
Yeah,
I don't think.
like Pickles pig feet.
My mother used to do pickled eggs and she would use beet juice
Yeah,
to pickle the eggs.
yep.
But I mean, is that still safe?
Yep, you can even do lettuce if you wanted to. I don't know who would want to. Yes, but you can do lettuce if you wanted to. You could anything that you could eat, you could do. In the old days, I grew up on canned chicken. It was the saltiest stuff on the planet. But we always had chicken and dumplings with mashed potatoes. I grew up on that. For us, I grew up on a hog farm, so that chicken and dumplings was a treat because we didn't have to have pork one more day. So, but yeah, you can can anything. And these books all have, the website all has everything laid out.
Okay, so then did they say anything like with meat, raw pack versus hot pack?
For meat?
No, yeah.
Yeah, yep,
So
they
what do
talk about that.
recommend?
It's usually up to you and what you want to do.
But you still can do both.
Yeah, it's just raw pack takes longer than hot pack, but it's not usually by a ton of more time.
I
And-
think it's better that way.
I think so.
And
I
chicken
think so.
will be with the bones and without
Yep,
bones or meat.
yep, and the other thing too is, so let's go back to salsa she was talking about. Okay, so you have tomatoes, onions, peppers, pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
Seasoning.
Seasoning.
So now you have 3 different vegetables. So how do you know, I'm asking you,
And that's
which
where
one
we
you go by?
That's what we go to that website, that National Center for Home Food Preservation. It has to be so many quarts tomatoes, so many quarts onions, peppers, and it can only be that much of all that. And then the spices, you can add whatever you want, but you can't vary from the amounts that they say
Yep.
because of the acidity level.
Is vegetable soup the same way then?
Yep, absolutely. So instead of going by the acidity of the tomato, you go by the least acidic thing in there, which is probably the onions. And then from that's where they start figuring out their research on how long that's got to be canned. So,
But peppers don't really have acid, do they?
peppers, onions, so you would figure out, it would tell you, the recipes will tell you, this is why you have to do it this long. So, and you get into something like the vegetable beef soup, there again, you're kind of going, which one do I pick? Well, the book, if the book is good, and these two are, it'll tell you this is how long you have to do it. And if not, that's when you call them. You say,
I think
I'm-
it's easier to do all the separate vegetables than just pour.
yeah, pour it all together. So that's what's really interesting about it is the biggest thing though is what they want us to bring to you is please be safe when you're doing this. And it can be done. I think that canning in particular, even though not the oven method hopefully, is really coming up the ranks with a lot of younger people, would you say? They're kind of getting more interested. As a 4-H mom, I'm hearing a lot of kids going back to, I want to learn how to crochet, I want to know how to knit, and all what I call those old-fashioned arts that I learned when I was a kid, they're all finding that very interesting and wanting to get back to that. So if you guys have talents, share them with some kids around you, because some folks like me, I never learned that. And so to teach her that, I'm like, Mom, I have to find somebody to help her. But I can
And
show
think
her.
That's where you can, it gets it back out for young people.
Yep.
If their parents don't do it, where are they, they've got to have like
Yep.
a mentor in some place to.
Yep. So one thing we're going to do, now that I've gone through all this is kind of an overview. Next spring, it's my hope that we can take a time somewhere, I'm working with community services here, where we can get into a kitchen somewhere and we can gather some vegetables up starting in March or April. I realize there's nothing in the garden, so we'll have to do with whatever's in the store at the time. And we'll grab some canners and we'll just invite people in, and we will send everybody home with their first jar of canned tomatoes or green beans or whatever it might be. Yes?
On that note, is there a website or something, or somewhere where you can sign up for notifications? Because I happened to pass by somebody else that said they were interested on this in Facebook, and that was the only reason I happened to see it.
Well, Marshall Community Services will be putting it in their book. Where are you from? Gallatin?
And if you
Okay.
go to Extension Master Gardeners of Lyon County on Facebook,
Okay.
Extension Master Gardeners of Lyon County on Facebook.
Yep.
I post everything that I come across on there too, and you can also message with questions.
Yeah.
Matter
We
of fact,
try to get it out in the newspaper too, and
Yeah, I read some.
yeah, so we try our best to get it out.
Actually,
This has the Facebook, this brochure has Facebook on it. It has a list of all the master gardeners and their specialties, so you can pick up one of these. And, on it.
So that all being said, one last thing before I forget. Sue here with Lyon County has putting your perennials to bed. That will be in monarch butterflies. We have somebody coming here to town to talk about the monarch butterflies. This is the Lyon County Master Gardeners putting on our garden day. So that'll be coming up. You can pick up a flyer over here. And then Sue has a class coming up later in September. Could you talk about that, please?
Yeah, legends and myths of grandmother's garden, yes. Be prepared to be discouraged over all the things you've tried over the years.
I had some eccentric.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if you have any questions, my name's in that brochure too, so you can feel free to give me a call. And I'll try my best to help you through your situation with canning.
So,
So.
when you were talking about testing these,
Mm-hmm.
when do you think you might try that?
It'll probably be next spring, I think would be a good time.
I would like to test them.
Yep,
I
because
mean, I would gladly replace the weights if I needed to.
yeah, because what we're going to have to do is when I get over to Clarkfield, that's where the canning tester is currently residing in a closet. I am going to have to get it out and send it to Presto to have them double check that it's still calibrated, and then get it back. And then after that, we'll be able to start setting it up. And we've actually have Lincoln County, Yellow Medicine Lion, and I think Redwood County want us to spend some time and help out trying to get some of these arts back going with the kids and families. And so this is a good place to start. Dig it out, dig your canner out, bring it in, let's talk about it. Give you some directions on how to get started up again or keep you going if you've been doing it.
So do they charge to test it?
No, there won't be any
But
charge.
I'm from Murray County, that's all.
We didn't hear that.
I'm just.
Murray County's fine. Yeah.
Well, that's all the other parties, not Murray.
Well,
We have
well,
a
like
master
I,
gardener that isn't from Lyon County because there is no master gardening group in her county, and so she's part of ours, so don't let that keep you from.
definitely.
I think
Well-
the one thing that has happened over the years that has really disappointed me in canning is that we used to be able to buy lugs of fruit, and
Oh.
they were so reasonable. I mean, I can remember of canning lugs and lugs of peaches. 17 pounds in a lug, 7 quarts of peaches, and you pay $1.99 for the lug of peaches.
Oh, you really? Wow. Wow.
$4.99 for a lug of big cherries.
Yeah, the truck's gonna be at Greenwood Nursery here.
Yeah, that amounts to
But that's not cheap.
Wow.
You can at least get involved if you want.
Yeah, you can at least get it. So, I mean, I have a friend who's gone back to planting fruit trees.
Ah, no, bless your heart. Any other questions?
This becoming a master gardener thing, what is the advantage of that? What all do you do? Is it
Okay.
free to become a master
No,
gardener? I assume
unfortunately
there's
not.
cost with it?
There is a
Yes.
cost with
Obviously
it.
time.
The total cost is $325. If you join the Lyon County Master Gardeners, once you've been certified, we reimburse you $100 of that cost. If you find that there's somewhat of a hardship, then we can direct you to scholarships that the university has to help pay for it. That $325 pays for a background check. Even if you've had a background check because you're a preschool teacher or something else, we still go through the background check. That's important because we work a lot with children. And then it includes the online course. The online course starts in January and generally goes through April, but you can do it at your leisure. And then the first year you have to do 50 hours of volunteer work. We're negotiating this because I think that's a lot, especially if
Sounds
you're
like
mom
a
and
lot.
you've got 3 little kids or something, that's a lot. But as master gardeners, we'll find you 50 hours. We'll invite you to everything, and that includes attending meetings, helping prepare for a program. That's volunteer work too. Then after that, then you become certified. You're an intern up until you complete your 50 hours, and that should be done by December 31st. Then each year, you have to get 5 hours of education. This would count as education. And you have to do 25 hours of volunteer work. And we have a variety of projects that we do throughout the community. You can consult on your own. You may call me up and say, guys, I got something wrong with my tree. Can you come look at it? All of that counts as volunteer work too. And we help you through all of that as the group. We have about 10 people in the group right now, and we help you through that. We're inviting you to attend meetings. Even as an intern, it used to be you had to wait until you completed. But no, right now, next meeting is September 6th at Memorial Park at 1 o'clock. Bring a chair. If it rains, we'll be in the lobby at the Y. And we're going to talk about, hopefully we've got some people that are come by, and we're going to help you through. And you can go online. The website isn't in the brochure, the pretty handout with the flowers on it over there. You can go online and apply. You have to fill out an application, and then it's sent to me, and theoretically I interview you, but we like everybody. Unless we hear bad rumors out there in the community, we accept everybody into the group. And then we make sure that you follow the steps. The next step would be background check, and then the university will contact you and say, now it's time to register. You passed your background check. Send me your money, and let's go.
And how many hours would you guess Sue, the Lyon County Master Gardeners put in a year?
Oh my gosh. Well, how many do you put in? You put in a ton. I would say the group probably everybody averages maybe 30 to 50 hours a year of volunteer work, but there are several that average more. It just depends on.
You have your booth at the fair.
We have a booth at the fair. We have 2 plant sales, one at the fair. We have one at Memorial Park in June. We did have a community garden. We no longer have the community garden. They decided to use that property for something else. We do a lot of consulting. We have one member that goes out and actually, he's a retired landscaper, architect, and goes out and he will create a landscape for you. He often brings other master gardeners with him, so that we're out there working on that. But we work with Southwest Co-op. We do a program with the kids. They do a program every year at SMSU where all kinds of people, scientists and naturalists, and people come in and the kids go from room to room. So there's always one room full of master gardeners during the program. So just a real variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
You can do your own thing. You can do it with a group.
So you have a plant sale at the fair too?
Mm-hmm. On the Sunday in the afternoon.
Oh, when does your fair start?
We do lots of presentations.
It's always the second weekend in August.
Visit clubs.
So
if
your
club wants
fair is
somebody
still
to come and talk.
Sunday?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I'm, as a master gardener, personally looking for someone to take some of my hours. This year I'll be close to 1,000.
yeah.
I'm just about there already, and it's just August. So, and I have 3 kids and a regular job, and we live on a farm. Yes, I do very well, thank you. But I love it. That's why I do so much of it.
As much energy and effort into it
Yep.
as suits your lifestyle.
Yep, you sure can. So there's always, you can always buddy up with somebody. Makes it just that much more fun. So any other questions? All right, well, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.